Welcome to SmartThings 101. We are excited to have you here today. I'm Sarah Mates. I am a product manager with SmartThings. One of the things that I enjoy about being a product manager is taking user problems and working with engineering to help solve those problems. One of the folks that I get to work with to help solve those problems is Jim Anderson.
I'm Jim. I've been with SmartThings actually for about 4 years now. So this is my third SDC, and some of you have actually seen it previous SDCs, so it's been very exciting as we grow and evolve the platform. And so it's a 101 session, even if you've been working with SmartThings for a long time, there's still some new information I think you're gonna find here. So with that, Sarah?
So kind of the game plan for the next 30 minutes or so is a conversation around how we see the platform, kind of what the vision is for what we want to do with it. From there, we're going to take you through some of the areas that you might be working with to build a SmartThings solution. So we're going to start off with capabilities as a building block for the solution. From there, we'll walk through a brief overview of devices, followed by automations. We'll take you through getting started with the API. And finally, we'll wrap up with a conversation about how you engage or work with us. As we go through, because this is a 101 conversation, we've tried to flag out related sessions that you might find useful. So anywhere where we're not deep diving a particular topic, I will be stopping and saying, here's your session to go to. And we'll call those out as we go. Additionally, we've tried to flag through, as we work through the slides, anywhere where we have documentation available on the portal so that you can use these as references, and we'll be calling those out along the way. We have a 10-minute slot for questions towards the end, and we'll open that up at that time. Slides will be shared after the session. So jumping in and getting started with an overview of the platform. The SmartThings vision on what we want the platform to be is to truly allow developer access to an open ecosystem. So one of the things that we heard this morning was a lot of conversation about open ecosystems, open platforms, third-party developers, working with them, and that's part of the SmartThings goal. And the idea is that we would extend the IoT experience beyond the home and connect people in new ways maybe that haven't been thought of before, and that's what we look to developer communities to help us with. So in the most simplest terms, it's making sure that we have a series of robust devices, easy automations, and a unified smart home. So as a developer on the platform, what can you expect? The ability to integrate new devices into the SmartThings ecosystem. The ability to create automations that let users connect devices, automate their homes. And the ability to publish automations and devices. And what we're looking at is inside the mobile app, right? We have the catalogs and the mobile apps that allow that unified place that the users can go to really experience a smart home. We look to our developers, and why this is important for you is that it gives you the ability to create new solutions, new offerings, all within this single platform. So what is available? What are the tools that we're going to be talking about that you might hear as we work through this system today? The APIs themselves. We'll be referencing the developer portal where we have the majority of our documentation. We will talk about the developer workspace. And finally, we'll talk slightly about the Works with SmartThings certification program. So the ecosystem, how do we see the cloud? How do we see the platform? I would expect that as you work through presentations today, you are going to see a few of these images over and over again. Starting kind of in the upper left-hand corner, we have the devices and the different connectors that work there. Coming down to the bottom, we have the automations and services. And we'll talk through both of those sections individually. Where I can and where it makes sense in the presentation, I've actually spent the time to pull out screenshots of how these actually interact inside the mobile app so that we can actually have an understanding that what happens when we develop and how that works for end users. Last but not least, and certainly an important topic, is the Bixby integration. Clearly from the presentations this morning, it's an important topic. I'm not going to cover it here. This is your first stop and jot, right? If you're interested in SmartThings and Bixby work, I highly recommend that you spend time at the Thursday session from 2:30 to 3:30. Additionally, code labs are available out there where you can find more information. So jumping into capabilities. We see capabilities as a really critical building block for how our systems work, right? At its core, the capability definition, because I think definitions are really important, is an abstraction or coalescence that allows devices and automations to work together. They are composed of two fundamental parts. One is the attributes that allow you to define the state that a device is in. And secondly is the command. So how do you control a particular device or actuate a particular device? So when I say that it's a fundamental building block, it's because we really look at it as a holistic way in which the capabilities support the APIs, the devices, the smart apps, the custom automations, the scenes that all exist inside the SmartThings app. Beyond that, the user interface really becomes an important, folks, come on in, we got plenty of space. The user interface that we have has controls that the user interacts with. We use it for our permissionings model to make sure that we have secure integration. And last but not least, also have the notifications that are sent to the end user. So your motion sensor has detected motion, a door has been opened or closed, a light has turned on or off. All of those communications to the end user happen through the interface and are based on capabilities. Finally, we use capabilities to support local execution or make sure that we have the ability to execute when offline. So standard capabilities model, right? How do we get these things available to you? Capabilities are approved by SmartThings for use in devices. We create and maintain them inside the SmartThings development team. And when I say that, we actually have a fairly cross-discipline group of people that meets to get together to say, does this fit? Does this make sense? How do we define it? How do we define it consistently? And then we get into a place where we have a reusable model for the standard use cases that we're aware of from a development perspective. Capability reference guide is available out on our developer portal. So if you want to understand what capabilities we have, what the attributes are, what the commands are inside those capabilities, please feel free to spend some time out on that developer portal. So in real life, what does this mean? The capabilities here actually are from a light bulb or from a lamp that works inside my house. That's my version of SmartThings. I'm also a user as well as a contributor here. So you can see that we have the label information that comes off the device. But the important thing when we're talking about the capabilities here is that we can see the switch, the on and off functionality that we've told the device that it needs to have, represented in the user interface, the color control, the switch level, and color temperature. So what this gives us is a segue into conversations about devices. So when we talk about devices, we're kind of talking about everything that's up in this upper left-hand corner here, right? Which is a fairly heavy portion of this particular ecosystem slide. The devices, are physical devices, but this is our representation of the device in the system. We take these capabilities that we've just talked about and build them into a representation or an abstraction of the device on our system. regardless of the type of integration, which we'll talk about in a minute, we use the capabilities definition model to make sure that we have a repeatable, usable device and automation across the system. In terms of device protocols, we have a number of different ways that devices can connect into the SmartThings system. If you are looking to build a cloud connector solution, we have the ST schema implementation, we have Lambda implementations, we have webhook implementations. If you are using a Zigbee Z-Wave protocol, we connect those through the hub connector solution. And finally, if you're directly connected, we have the SmartThings device kit as a solution for you to integrate with. Devices and the device integration solution are a little bit beyond what I would call 101. We do have 2 sessions coming up that I invite you to attend. The Streamlining IoT Systems Cloud-to-Cloud Device Integrations is happening this afternoon at 2:30. And the SmartThings device kit, connecting devices to the SmartThings cloud, is tomorrow at 1:30. So depending on kind of where your areas of interest are, I highly recommend that you attend those particular areas. So moving on to automations, right? Moving down kind of through the bottom portion of the cloud here. So the current offering for automations is really the idea that we have an interaction model that allows users to control their home. We have kind of 2 worlds. In the SmartThings mobile app, you'll see an inclusive list of all of the automations, whether it's a custom automation or a SmartApp automation. If it is a custom automation, we're looking at a if-then type scenario where the user is actually in charge of the configurations of the conditions and resulting actions inside the system. This is built into the SmartThings mobile app and is outside of the control of the developer. The SmartApp automation is a little bit different. These are the areas that we look to our third-party developers to help build. These are web services built by developers, which allow greater control and customizations of very specific use cases. So why automations, right? And what we're really looking to do with the automations is create a predefined user experience in a way that allows an end-to-end and repeatable process for users. It simplifies the user's home experience while getting their home up and automated. So in particular, for new users who maybe aren't as familiar with how automations happen or how to get going, smart apps are one of the ways that we see this process simplified for them. While the application or the smart app is created by the developer, these are configured and installed by the user. And one of the advantages that we see to the smart app implementation is that the framework that the users see is built inside of SmartThings, which means the end user has a repeatable process for how they onboard, so they're not seeing new or different kinds of implementations. Beyond that, the frameworks work across operating systems. So again, really, consistency in use for end users. For developers, we're looking at solutions that are built by developers. We use Auth2 for secure integration. And we're looking at streaming of normalized events generated for the SmartThings ecosystem. So what that really does is create a way in which, as devices are emitting events, we have the automations in place that can respond to the events, they can subscribe to the system, and make sure that we have kind of that unified ecosystem for the end user. So automation integrations, we have 2 primary offerings. The first is the SmartApp Automation, in which the developers work inside the SmartApp ecosystem. That particular solution allows users to discover the smart app inside the SmartThings catalog, right? So in that case, you've got a solution where you've got the catalog offering, and then you have the actual configuration as indicated here. So this is actually a solution that one of our developers has created. So if you're in an API app solution, right, which is the second offering we have a little bit of a different kind of use case or different kind of scenario there. The API apps are structured to allow solutions that are maybe integrated outside of the SmartThings solution. So if you have a wearable, if you have car integrations, if you're a voice integration, if you're doing dashboards, this is probably a different kind of solution for you to consider. Fundamentally, your developers are working outside the SmartApp Automation's ecosystem to build this API integration in. The users are interacting with SmartThings outside the mobile app, which means that they have their SmartThings mobile app, but they're additionally connecting to SmartThings in an alternate way. We're really excited about this offering, and Jim is doing a demo in the next session of this as well. So if you want to see this live and in action, we'll have that as a choice in the next hour.
Thanks, Sarah. By the way, this slide clicker has a do not press button. I'm going to try really hard not to press it, but it's like a big red button. I really want to press it. I'm going to try hard. So related to the next session that we're going to show some of the automation stuff, also make sure to check out the SmartThings Code Lab booths. There you can actually get down and with some code and create a device integration, either with the SDK or with an ST schema. And there's also a way to interact with the automations as well. So Sarah mentioned about devices and automations, and really the thing that ties all of it together is the standard REST-based API. So at some point when you're going to be integrating your device or creating an automation, you're going to interact with that API and you want to know how it talks. And so there are some basics about the API that are good to know. API.smartthings.com is where you find it. It talks in JSON. And it supports OAuth 2 bearer tokens. We'll discuss a little bit more next. And of course, it's well documented. And if you follow that link down below, you will arrive at that documentation. And so when I'm interacting with a new developer tool or a new API, I want to get my hands on as fast as possible. So I call this the 2-minute drill. And this is where really in 2 minutes, we can go get a token, and we can start calling the APIs. So what you need to do is have a Samsung account, and then you go to the URL for the tokens page, get yourself a token, call APIs. Now, is the response from the APIs more interesting if you have devices and things in your SmartThings account? Of course, right? But still, for me, I like to feel how that API talks, right? What kind of headers does it accept? What kind of response types does it return, et cetera. So you can see here we're just calling api.smartthings.com list devices. And so this is a good point to just talk a little bit about security, and then really is a pointer to a session that Jeff Beck is delivering tomorrow afternoon, I think in this room. So when we talk about having a RESTful API in general, security is a big part of that, right? When we talk about entering the home, it's a really big part of that. We need to make sure that people's homes are secured, that developers have access to do things on their behalf that the users want and are authorizing. And so I mentioned OAuth 2 bearer tokens through the API, and that is one of those key components of securing your integration type. And so Jeff's going to talk about that and a lot of other stuff tomorrow's session. I highly recommend checking it out in general. Security is a very important concept to the smart home and working with APIs in general. And one last thing, once you've kicked the tires a bit with using APIs through curl or Postman, you want to go a little bit deeper with the APIs. We have an open source CLI. You can see here I'm trying to be as developer-y as possible and use acronyms the whole way, right? The CLI is a command line interface, and paths is what we call personal access tokens. So this is a simple open source tool that allows you to interact with the device APIs through a command line interface. So I'm often working at night and on my laptop, and I have a terminal open, right? And so this is just another way. If I'm in a room, for example, where I don't have a voice integration, or I don't want to take out my phone, I'm in the terminal, I can quickly just control devices this way. So it is useful. I find it useful. But more importantly, it's very simple, and it's open source, so you can go and you can learn how the API could interact with a tool like this and even extend it. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Sarah, who's going to talk about engaging with us through your developer journey.
Thanks.
I didn't press the button.
You didn't press. I got it. All right. So conceptually, we've walked through what you need to know to go ahead and get started. We've walked through the API and how you can get started building with it. But the next steps, right, we want to make sure that you have the information that you need to engage appropriately with us. So first of all, we encourage you to go explore. The developer portal is available. The link is here. On the developer portal, we have documentation, we have blogs, we have partner registration, we have a place where you can log support tickets if you need it. We have an API reference guide. So we've really tried to build out a solution that provides information so that you can self-serve, if you will. As you get going and set up your solutions, make sure that you understand kind of what your options are, and we can walk through those in detail a little bit. First of all, if you are building a device integration or a SmartApp automation, those are both generally available solutions. Everything that you need to get started and get going is available on the developer portal and in the workspace. If you're building an API app integration, that solution is a little bit different in that it's a controlled availability solution. So if you're building an API app, you will need to be a partner in our system, and there is an additional registration form that gets filled out. And we're working with our business development partners at that point, and that's really to make sure that we understand how the platform is being used. So getting in, once you've built your solution and you've got it up and running, we are going to want you to integrate your solution. We're asking that you do that via Workspace. A couple things happen there. First of all, is we get the API integration covered. We have the user interface into the SmartThings mobile app generated from there, and then we have the catalog integration points generated as well. So it's really important that we do have that workspace leveraged appropriately for the solution. From there, we can initiate the certification process and then access additional developer tools that you might need to use in your solution. Certification. So certification is kind of one of those things that we see as really important, particularly because it builds customer confidence when we have that Works with SmartThings logo. So you have to be a SmartThings partner. We need you to complete the self-assessment checklist, which you can download from Workspace. And once we work through that and we get the certification, we can actually get your device published. So I think you may have heard Magnus talk a little bit about this program at Keynote this morning. Ted and Magnus, I think, are talking about this program a little bit more. So again, if you need to deep dive and want more information, I recommend the next session. Let's go back to support for one more moment. So we don't want to just get you in, right? We want to make sure that you have the ability to sustain a relationship, so we'll keep you informed of new product features or service upgrades through the developer portal and workspace. We welcome your feedback. So we are prepared to support taking your feedback through community forums, support tickets, or through any of your business partners that you work with. With that,
should we improv a little bit and do a little live?
If you're feeling, feeling it.
Why not try? So I think it'd be useful, so we talked about APIs, so I'm just gonna go ahead and run through trying to interact with some. And it's the blue button. Do you see that? Let me try to, wow, didn't. Don't look now, let's just see. Okay, is this readable somewhat? Okay, so I'm just gonna show using curl with the APIs on this account. Please don't copy my token. To be honest, I'd be kind of impressed, right, if you can memorize that. Also, to be honest, it's not really my home, so. So I'm just gonna show throwing some APIs up here just so you can see how it would come back with some devices. So, we said it talks in JSON, right? So I just asked for some devices, and so here, and my token has permissions, of course, to access devices. You can see how it interacts for the devices API. We get information we'd expect. We get IDs, names, labels, and then really some of the key information is in this capabilities, right? So Sarah talked about the capabilities being that building block, and here we know that this device supports the lock capability. Makes sense, it's a door lock. Battery, right? And that allows us to abstract away the details of whatever device is actually backing this on the platform, and just know that it supports the things that these capabilities do. And so we can also then use the API to control some of these devices or get status. So I'm going to switch here and try to get the status of, I think this is the lock, right? So we see that we get in this case we ask for the full status of the device. So we get back, for each capability, the attributes and the values that they have. So we see that my door is unlocked. If this were a real door and I wasn't, at home, I might be a little concerned, but I'm not. This is a demo device. So we can interact with the API pretty straightforward. Get devices, get their status. We can control them as well. So and again, I'm showing this using a personal token and curl. An application integration would do this through their library, etc. But it's a nice way to interact with it. So here I'm going to, what am I doing? I'm turning on the switch. So you see, it's got that device ID in the path, commands, and then I'm passing information about what I want to do. Here I want to, on the switch capability, I want to execute that on command. And that's successful. And why is that an empty body there? It's because it's an acknowledgement. It's a 200 response saying, yep, that's a valid command, on a valid capability, on a real device, and the platform then will execute that device and broadcast to any subscriptions or anything like that outside the platform. So now if I were to go back, and I think this is my switch, and ask for the status, I'd see that the switch is on. Right? So again, just using curl or Postman or whatever you want, and a personal token is a great way to just, really get familiar with the API and how it feels. So that, I think, wraps up. So now we can go back to Q&A, unless, Sarah, you have anything else? Is it red? Yeah, red. So questions? There's somebody over here. I think so they're going to come around with a mic. So try to wait for the mic so that it gets on the recording.
When I use these APIs, what are the kind of things I can control? Is it only consumer devices, or is it Harman, or also includes Arctic? What are the kind of things I can control?
So with the API? Okay. So the API currently supports, Sarah can fill in where I'm missing. So devices, like we saw, that's very common, obviously, and really it's any device that integrates to the platform. And then we have APIs to control and get information about scenes.
List and execute.
Yeah, list and execute scenes, which are basically a way to capture device state. Like if you have a movie mode in your house where you want your certain lights, certain colors and stuff, you can sort of capture that state. You can do that through the API. You can also interact with locations, so you can get locations, information about them, and then there's some developer APIs as well, like information about your apps, stuff like that. And then there's also, depending on the integration type, there's ways to create schedules and subscriptions and stuff like that. I hope that answers your question. Oh.
What kind of device?
The question was what kind of devices. Do you know, so it's any device that integrates to the platform, but I think your question is a little deeper than that. So
if I'm understanding the question, are you asking if it's just SmartThings devices or? If Harman and Arctic devices have been integrated to the SmartThings platform, you can integrate with those devices, but they have to be an operating device on the system.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
So if Arctic or Harman devices aren't already into the SmartThings cloud, no, I wouldn't just get information back about that. So first we'd need to integrate those devices into the cloud, and then they'd be there in the API. Thank you. There's a few more questions up here. I don't know.
Can you speak a little bit more about the local execution capability? Is that happening on my hub or is that happening on my phone?
It's on your hub. Yep. There's a one up here too, and one back there.
Hello. So when you think about state of a device, are you reporting on health as well, right? So if I had light bulbs and I could say they're within 20 hours of expiring, right? I want to order new light bulbs. Is that something that I could do?
As a developer, I don't believe we have health APIs publicly yet.
Not publicly yet.
It might be on the roadmap. It is something as a platform feature that we do have. It's called device health, and it's intended to inform users, hey, this device hasn't checked in a while. Maybe it's not quite healthy, or the battery's low, or something like that. Because it is a really important thing for a user to know that if all of a sudden I get up in the morning and my garage door is open in the morning, and I realized I didn't get an alert last night because the battery was low, but I don't want to check the battery every day, right? So it's a very valid use case. One up here.
You reference in one slide there's two ways to do automations, the SmartApp automations and API automations. My question is, the SmartApp automations, is that referencing the Groovy-based apps, smart apps that we're used to from the original SmartThings platform? And if yes, is that concept still living in the new SmartThings app?
That's a very good question. So conceptually, yes. Like Groovy Smart Apps and the new Smart Apps using Lambda or webhook model, very similar conceptually. So as far as I think right now, the Groovy apps, some of them do work on the SmartThings app, right?
There's been a subset that's been pulled forward into the new solution.
Right. And so we really are encouraging people to start thinking about and exploring the new model going forward. Do you have a follow-up?
Well, I guess what I'm struggling with the new model is the thing that is missing is the way for the hub to interact with devices on the LAN that are not exposed to the internet.
Okay.
And I was wondering what the solution is.
Do you mean like an actual how do you integrate a LAN connected device into the platform?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question. So that is something that we are looking to add support for in the new platform. It's not there yet. So afterwards we can chat too, if you find me, and we can talk a little bit more about that and any specific use cases that you have. Cool.
Can you deploy a non-certified device into a production SmartThings network?
Ted will be talking about that. We are working on building a program for that. Ted is talking about that in the next hour. Is the short answer, it's on the roadmap? Okay, short answer is that it's on the roadmap, and it is something that we would be looking towards in the future.
Thank you.
Hello. You showed a slide about the dev workspace in order for third party to be able to access the SmartThings. Is the dev workspace already supporting hub connected devices?
It's a roadmap item as well for us. So it's something that we understand the urgency for, we understand the need for. It's just not currently available in dev workspace.
Is there a forecast when it will be available?
I don't have that information.
Hi. I noticed that you were controlling this through the terminal and you were passing in the token in part of the command line. I'm worried that that might be stored in your bash history file and that another program, potentially another malware, not running as the root, but running as the same user as you, could harvest that token and then unlock your doors. Are there some security features, or would you recommend running this in a container or a VM to keep it more isolated?
So this is not, like when you're getting a personal token, they're really just that, and they're developer tools. So me personally, I'm not very concerned about somebody accessing or getting my laptop and doing that, but yeah, that could happen. Now, for an application that would really would be widely distributed to developer or end users, we wouldn't do it with a personal token. We'd create one of those automations, and then that token grant is handled differently, right? And it's very specific to what the user's authorized, and your actual application would store that securely. So with a personal token, it's like grab it. What you're comfortable with is really what you should do, and me, it's okay, and that token is going to be ephemeral. I think I'm going to get rid of it, but it's. The way you're thinking is good, and so you should check out that security session tomorrow if you are able to. There's one up here, too. Up here.
Okay.
And back there.
Right.
Oh, you've got it, Mike. Right.
Yeah. So do you have plan to allow like a cloud-to-cloud information sharing? For example, our customer have already our smart home devices, and we have our own app. Do you allow our customers to log in with our app to kind of like give it this login password for its own SmartThings account so that the two things is linked together?
So the answer is yes. The details of how to do that might vary. So if you're going out from your platform and you want the user to authorize into SmartThings and then authorize and come back and then control SmartThings from your application. If that's what you're talking about, that's what those, is it the other way?
The other way.
The other way.
Yeah.
Yes, you could do that. We have, through the SmartApp Automation, there's an OAuth input, for example, is one way, where you would then flow out to your system, authorize, and then your automation smart app or service app can then interact with that other platform on the token, with that token on that user's behalf. So, yep.
I just wanted to answer his question from earlier. I'm back here.
Oh.
So if you were on a Mac, there's a command called secure, which lets you add a generic password to the keychain.
Right.
And then in your history, you can reference not the token, but the reference to the token.
Nice.
And hence in the history, there would be nothing insecure.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, any more questions? I don't think so. What time is it? That thing is confusing me. Okay. Well, I think that's it. I really hope you guys come to some of the other sessions today. Like we said, the next session is going to be the What's New. It's going to also have a little bit of a demo of that API app, along with some other interesting stuff. And then for reference, here's some more of the sessions and the code booths. Out there are the code labs, which are great, hands-on experience, and then the SmartThings booths are great places to go look at the SmartThings product line that's coming out. It's pretty cool. Anything else? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
It's been
guys.
great.